Hello everybody, it's Chris Thomas and welcome to my channel. This video is the next in my series for safe locations for the USA, and I am doing a state-by-state expose of safe areas and dangerous areas and sensitive areas for the New Madrid event, for the pole shift event, and for the after-time survival viability. And hopefully it'll help people make a choice so that they can set up their safe location in an area that survives the pole shift well, an area where you can remain hidden from the military, and also is a good viable area for after-time survival so that you don't have to move. That's the whole point here, because movement in the after-time is most likely for most people is going to be by foot. So let's choose a good location, bite the bullet, move from your southern states, move from California and the coastal lines of the continental U.S. and make good choices on an area to relocate to for a good life in the aftertime. Now, tonight I'm going to cover Kentucky, Indiana, and Michigan. And I'm going to conclude with an explanation of this map, which I've taken from ZetaTalk and modified. Well, basically I've taken the points and the format from ZetaTalk, and I put it on my own map and added a 9 1/4. So I'm going to explain this sequence and what is driving the sequence of Earth changes, and the driving of it, and also why they take place in this sequence. Bear in mind that each event area creates room, physical room, for the plates to move to the next level, to the next movement. So one starts to move, then it moves, and that makes room for the next one, and that makes room for the next one. And when South America moves, that makes room for this tear. And then when that moves, that allows this tear happens, that makes it possible for the African plate to roll. And then that makes it possible for 7, and then 8, and then 9. And finally, when the New Madrid occurs, that makes room for the final event, which is the tearing of the northern portion of the mid-Atlantic ridge. And once that tears, then you have number 10. So that's the basic thing I'm going to explain. And so let's head right into Kentucky. Alright, we're looking at Kentucky, USA. Lots of good news for Kentucky. But let's start with basically the physical description. We have rivers to the west and north, and even down along the eastern portion of Kentucky. So it's ringed with a river. It's sitting on wonderful old rock, limestone rock, right about in here like this. So this means that during the pole shift itself, the ground is not going to open up under your feet. There will be landslides, there will be flooding in rivers, but the ground is stable. Also, for the aftertime, with the aftertime being plagued with aftershocks, the ground will just vibrate and rumble, but there won't be cracks opening up. Again, landslides. So it's stable rock. This is the wonderful news about Kentucky. So we're going to have a flooding to the west, and it will look like this. This is what I call the new Mississippi Gulf, and seawater will come up, rushing up here. It'll be full of trash and swirling through here, so there's no sense in setting up survival for the pole shift in the blue areas, dark blue. Now, I just want to reiterate that the dark blue area will be about 2025. But the good news with Kentucky is it has lots of highland to the east in these mountains here. Now, we do have nuclear stations here in Tennessee, in this area here. And Kentucky itself doesn't have any, and Indiana and Ohio have their nuclear stations high, close to the Great Lakes, and also being on solid, good, strong rock. Although one has to be careful to prepare for these things, but I think the nuclear stations will do a lot better in the northern states, including Kentucky, than in other areas of the U.S. and the world. So the point is that I don't think there'll be much radiation leaking down from the north into Kentucky, and Kentucky has no nuclear radiation state. But obviously, one will want to buy lots of potassium iodide pills because radiation will be in the environment more so than it is now. And potassium iodide, what it does is it's when you take the pill, your thyroid gland needs iodine, and that's where often radiation sickness comes from, unless you're exposed to some, very high concentrations, which won't happen unless you're sitting on top of a nuclear station during, or leaning against the building during the pole shift. So you take the iodine pills on a regular basis, and what happens is it keeps the thyroid replenished with the iodine that it needs, so that when you're eating, consuming water or food, or breathing, that the thyroid remains saturated with clean iodine, and radiative or radioactive iodine is not taken into the thyroid, and you have better resistance against the radiation in the environment. That's the idea for potassium iodide pills. So we have highland, we have solid rock, we have it's also fairly isolated. Now, there will be migrants, obviously, before the pole shift. We know that there'll be lots of action on the coasts due to the rolling of the South America and the compression of the Caribbean plate, throwing water into the Gulf of Mexico. Florida is going to be it's very, very low, so there's likely to be migration beforehand. The pole shift, unfortunately, of course, will take out many lives, but those who survive will be wanting to move to high land. As we've said before about Tennessee, doesn't look too good for Tennessee because it would be highly populated with migrants coming in from the south and coming from the east and coming from the west. But Kentucky is a little further north, and I believe that this area here will be full of fresh water, if not salt water, after the pole shift, but it will drain. But it'll be lots of lakes and swollen rivers through here, So I think that the eastern Kentucky will be somewhat protected against heavy migration from the south and from the east. So eastern Kentucky looks absolutely fabulous for the pole shift and the aftertime. Now also, the thing about Kentucky too is it has, this is the limestone bedrock, and these are potential karst areas. Now if you live in Kentucky, then you know all about this, but there will be lots of caves in Kentucky, I'm guessing, with all this kind of karst structure underneath here, all this limestone. So that means that one could potentially move to eastern Kentucky and find themselves a cave and set up your survival camp nearby, and then you could have a cave to weather out the pole shift in. And the thing about caves, of course, is it's free. It's right there. The only thing about caves is you want at least 2 exits, just in case the exits get plugged by debris blown there by the pole shift winds. The winds will be coming from this direction, like this. So, and 2 exits, and of course water. There's all kinds of things to be consider when you're going to be in a cave. Want it high and dry, and you want more than 2 exits, at least 2, just in case one gets plugged. So caves would be great. So that's the great thing about Kentucky as well. Now we've got highland. Now migration, as I said, there'll be limited migration, we think, going into Kentucky, and so it has a great location for that. Now, the other issue with these areas, when we're talking about Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, northern Mississippi, and Kansas, is that this is the area of the New Madrid, and we know that's going to give way sometime before the pole shift. My estimation is probably about 2021, 2022, somewhere in there. And so what it means is that if you live in those areas, is that you have to be ready for the pole shift before the New Madrid strikes. And it's going to affect land, according to ZetaTalk, from from New York, all the way east, all the way through the Gulf states to even into Mexico. So that we also know that all the bridges are going to go down on the Mississippi. So that means no supply of food or water or anything across them as far as by road is concerned. Now, the other thing too is that the U.S. being the way it is. Now, if you've always lived in the U.S. and you've never traveled outside of the U.S., you may find that the rest of the world is nowhere near as militaristic as your country is. But I'm in Canada. I can tell you, from my perspective, it is extremely militaristic. Now, I did have a person contact me. I have a number of people every day contacting me about things, and this particular person told me about a dream they had. They had to travel. Now, this is a fact that she does have to travel from Texas to the Appalachians. She does actually have to do that. And so she had this dream that she was traveling through the Gulf states from Texas, and when she got close to the Appalachian Mountains, the area where she wanted to get up into the highland, is that she encountered an army checkpoint with barbed wire across the road. So that is a very clear dream. That's a very clear warning dream, is to expect that. So if you want to beat the barbed wire, you want to beat the army checkpoints, the FEMA checkpoints, all the government red tape, you're going to have to be ready for the pole shift early so you don't have to travel for supplies or travel for family, that kind of thing. So at least a year before the pole shift, and don't expect to travel afterward. And in my opinion, and this is my thinking, that in the after time, after the New Madrid strikes, is don't expect a lot of government assistance. And of course, the heavy strike will be obviously right in these areas here and there, like that. So you can don't want to expect help. So if you live in these areas, like in there, then you want to be you're going to have to protect yourself against the earthquakes. This is the epicenter in this area here, and so the pole shift will start early for these people. And my suggestion too is to, I keep saying this, is to have propane for cooking in the after time, so you don't leave a smoke trail in the sky so the military can't find you. Also, before the New Madrid and before the pole shift, disconnect any gas lines that you have going to the house. Cap them off so there's no gas, no lines with gas in them into your house. Make sure you dig up the pipe and air out the pipe and cap off the supply to your house if you want it not to burn down during the pole shift or during the New Madrid. So we have a wonderful place to be in Kentucky and in eastern Kentucky for the pole shift and the after time. Just we have to be careful, prepare for the pole shift early if you live in these states because of the New Madrid that's going to strike, and you're going to be isolated and traveling will be very difficult. So that's my take on Kentucky. Okay, we're going to look at Indiana, USA. We've got the Ohio River to the south, and we've got another river to the west, and we've got the Great Lakes at the extreme north west, and we've got fairly flat land in the main portion of Indiana, and thankfully you have some Appalachian Mountains in your southeast. Indiana lays on very good rock, so we know your ground is not going to open up underneath you and swallow up your camp during the pole shift. So Indiana's in here like that, so it's very good that way for rock. And now there is a problem in that, of course, Indiana, well, it's not a matter of course, it's not necessarily known, but apparently, according to ZetaTalk, the town of Kokomo is one of the centers that is of the U.S. government secretly setting up for an after-time government. They call it a carry-on government. So you have that center in and around Kokomo. So that means that's the same problem that Colorado has with Colorado has in Denver. You got a wasp's nest of military in Kokomo, Now, most likely you have other military installations around in Indiana. So, and the fact that it's fairly flat, although one may find areas away where you can hide, because there are areas in Indiana that are high and protected. They're good, would be good survival as far as surviving the pole shift itself. But for after-time living really needs to be very much part of your plan, because if you want to move in the aftertime, it's going to be by foot or by it's going to be by goat cart, or if you're rich enough to be able to afford horses, it will be by horse, but probably by foot. So wherever you set up your survival camp really should be carefully considered for a life in the aftertime. So although we have a lot of space in Indiana that's available for survival for the pole shift, I'm going with southeastern Indiana in the Appalachian area here, even though it will be plagued with some flooding through here. So you'll have to get this map, heywhatsthat.com, put in 675 for the, now again, the dark blue is the pole melt. That's why it's primary, because there's no sense in setting up your survival camp within an area that's going to be flooded over. So, but in my estimation, and it's not just mine, I'm taking information from ZetaTalk, but as I said, the southeastern areas of Indiana in the Appalachian Mountains do look good, and right in here. So that would be my suggested location for Indiana, obviously taking care against the flooding in these areas here. And so the seawater will make it all the way up there eventually. I'm not sure, I actually doubt it if the pole shift waves will be very heavy up here, but there will be lots of water, and so don't forget, on the hour of the pole shift, this is what it looks like. But very soon you're going to have water flying, backing up, and these rivers are going to swell, and you're going to have a big mess. So as I said, the view I take for pole shift survival in any area is that eliminate any areas that are going to be swallowed up by the sea in the aftertime due to the pole melt. So we're looking at this area in the Appalachians for survival in Indiana, and I'm going to say it again, if you have gas lines, make sure that you disconnect them before the New Madrid hits, which I'll talk briefly on that in a sec. And make sure there's no gas in any lines in your house, and also make sure, speaking of gas, that you have propane cooking equipment, and especially in this area, and propane dedicated for cooking in the aftertime. That way, when the helicopters fly out from these locations, from Kokomo or from Fort Wayne, even I'm in Canada, I'm aware of a military in Fort Wayne and Lafayette. I don't know why, but the Kokomo, when the helicopters, don't forget, it's going to, in the aftertime, it's going to be a wasteland, and in some areas, and these people who set up the government, they are eventually going to come out of their hole, and they're going to come out with these dragoons that used to be called the U.S. military, and now they're dragoons. So they're going to be going out looking for livestock, people, you name it, for whatever purpose that these people that didn't tell you about the pole shift, and they're digging holes in here and supplying these places with food and liquor and wine and you name it. They got it all in these holes. And when they run out, they're going to come out looking. And there can be a wasp's nest of military flying looking for replenishment of various kinds of things. That's all I'm going to say on that. So if you are in these plains, and there's lots of space in Indiana, take a look at it here again. Expect helicopters overhead, and so have gas, so that propane, so that you don't leave a smoke trail in the sky, and no open fires for the first couple of years in the aftertime. So that would be Indiana. Okay, I just wanted to do this little addendum for Indiana. I actually neglected to discuss the New Madrid because it's as I said earlier, although this is 7.2, the earthquakes for the New Madrid area is going to be they're going to be spread out over weeks, maybe months, and so gradually all the bridges will go down on the Mississippi, and you'll have probably the other rivers as well in this area. So you're going to have problems getting supplied, as I said, for these states in this area here, which I'll just see again. It's these through this area here: Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, northern Mississippi, western Tennessee, western Kentucky here. So for Indiana, you're going to be affected as well. So so please be aware that when that happens, there's going to be Army checkpoints, there's going to be FEMA setups, there's going to be U.S. government's going to be in there, and travel is going to be difficult. You're going to be held up, maybe even blocked from travel entirely. So Indianans, please be careful about the New Madrid. Make sure that you don't need to travel too far at all after the New Madrid. So that means you still want, especially if you're living in southern Indiana, but there again, you probably don't want to be there because of the flooding. Anyways, but as I said, you're looking at being possibly in the Appalachians in this area, but I've covered that. I just wanted to just make sure that it was clear that you're going to be affected by the New Madrid fault line, and it's going to affect your travel and supply. So I just wanted to add that little bit for Indiana and the New Madrid effect. Okay, let's look at the state of Michigan. It's a bit complex, but essentially Michigan is on good rock, we know that. But I see problems with people who have a home that they want to save within 10 miles of the Great Lakes shores. ZetaTalk says you should be up 50 feet and 10 miles back from the Great Lakes. So if your home is within 10 miles, or if your survival camp is within 10 miles, or at 10 miles in, from the lakeshore, then your survival needs to take into consideration the kind of soil that you have underneath you. If you have anything that looks like this, now this is taken in near a river in northern Michigan. This sand is not stable. So when perhaps a 10-foot wave of water comes in there and it's already wet already, is a possibility that you might be drawn into a river of mud into the lakes on the backslosh if you're on poor soil. So I see that being the biggest problem for anyone who wants to be without the pole shift in Michigan. I mean, it's great for the aftertime. There's no question about that. You can see that it's on great rock, so it's terrific that way. So it's just being safe against the sloshing of the Great Lakes. So it's 50 feet up, 10 miles back, and this is what this is what the pole melt shows, but in reality, it's the lakes are liable to lose water. That is to say, they will become smaller. The lakes will become smaller because we know that tied to the actually it is tied to the New Madrid, but however, speaking strictly pole shift wise, the Gulf is going to open up greatly. So that's during the hour of the pole shift. So that's going to release a lot of pressure on the Great Lakes for the water to pass through. So even though there'll be lots of water, ZetaTalk says that the opening of the Gulf, the tearing open, so that you have the Gulf extending down to here. This piece of land is down like that. So that'll open up, and so it'll relieve the pressure. So, but there's still going to be sloshing, and it's like I say, that's the problem. I looked to see if I could find soil maps, but they couldn't find that much on. There's a lot on Michigan, but there wasn't any easy map. So people in Michigan are going to be very careful about the soil. Again, we don't want to be on soil like that is anywhere near the lakes. So that is the deal with Michigan. Now, as far as migrants are concerned, I think, although I've said before, and I thoroughly believe this, when the pole shift occurs, there's going to be many more people that survive the pole shift in these areas than there will in the Gulf states, for example, because of the massive pole shift waves and the flooding and the pole shift melt. But here, the pole shift is likely to be fairly uneventful, except for if you're close to the shore. So the point is probably be 20 miles from the shore. And if you have a house that's close to the shore, I wouldn't stay in it. Now, according to ZetaTalk, there will be some tearing along in the Green Bay Peninsula through here. So if you look at the rock, you can see that there's different ages of rock between these two here. So there's a lake there. So it's likely to be tearing along here. I missed that in my Wisconsin. So be careful for Wisconsin, for this area here, in that zone, following that inlet there. So be very careful in here. I wouldn't be in here. Michigan, as far as I remember, does not have, there we go, yeah, it's got a couple of nuclear stations, 3, 4 actually. So, but they're south. So I would obviously we want to stay away from these areas. So that really, where that makes central Michigan more of the place to be, and northern here. And this will be quite secluded up here. So I think up in here as well would be very unpopulated. So it'd be a very good place you can up in here as well to find a safe location up in here, a survival area. And so I would say mid to northern Michigan, excellent for rock, excellent for away from the pole shift waves. Be careful of the shoreline. And I would say now, as far as the New Madrid is concerned, you're a long ways from here, where the New Madrid is taking place here. But it is an event like that goes across the continent like that. So obviously there's likely to be some issues with travel as well in Michigan, not necessarily through the south necessarily, but certainly and most certainly for this bridge right here. So I would say that bridge is going to go in the New Madrid. So I would bet on it. I would plan on that. So if somebody is living in northern Michigan and has a job across that bridge, I would move jobs. Or if you have some kind of supply, you have family over there, traveling on the Great Lakes in those years, in those months before the pole shift, bad idea. So any family, any supply you need from Canada in this area here, I would definitely make sure. No, I'm not even sure if that is. Yeah, that's actually, my mistake. That's Wisconsin. So, anyways, even more so true. So it's your own country. So any supply, any reliabilities you have in Wisconsin, I would make sure they're capped off and finished with before the New Madrid. And that's going to be about. It's going to be about 2022. And so get it all done by 2021. But a wonderful state to be in. I think it'll be protected against migrant flow, a great deal of it. So it'll be a small amount of migrant flow. And plus, of course, the wonderful thing about Michigan's location is that it has access to sea travel. And it's also said that all the locks will break during the pole shift, so the water will be flowing through. So you may even have sea access, but certainly the Great Lakes alone for travel and trade will be fabulous for Michigan. So I think it not too badly affected during the New Madrid. But hard to tell. You will be isolated, as I said, from Wisconsin, and travel will be through this way. It'll be you're fairly close to that Kokomo, the backup, so-called backup U.S. government right in here. So, but I think you're far enough away for it not to be too much of a problem. So, fairly well isolated, good rock, stay away from the shores, great travel in the after time. Affected by the New Madrid here, um, and make sure you have propane for cooking in the aftertime, so you're not easily found with a smoke trail, and make sure that before the new Madrid happens, just in case, you turn off your gas. So that's the state of Michigan. Okay, I'd like to conclude with a quick overview of the states I've covered. Kentucky to the east in the mountains is superb for aftertime survival, and also for the pole shift itself. Good rock, fairly isolated, further north from the potential migrants coming up from the south, and a little bit isolated because of certain conditions here in Tennessee in this little section here. So very, very good. Indiana has a problem in that a lot of it will be flooded for the pole melt, but it's very much open plain. So you've got good land in northern Indiana, but the problem will be sociological with the military and the potential U.S. government installations in central Indiana, and so the only area for Indiana, in my estimation, would be a little patch in the southeast in the Appalachian Mountains, which so that's again people moving into the mountains. The other thing with Indiana, I may not have mentioned this, but it would be the population, the locals will want to move there as well. So it could be very crowded here in southeastern Indiana in the mountains and here. So this area here is still the best in Kentucky. And of course the military buildup and the exposure. If you're living out in northern Indiana, you're exposed to the military flyovers, and they will be looking for various things from people. So Indiana doesn't fare very well, except that little patch. So and then we move into Michigan. Michigan's a terrific state for pole shift survival and for aftertime living. I'm thinking the northern portion would be probably the most isolated, the fewest migrants, and the only thing about Michigan I want to underline is that in a lot of the images I saw of Michigan is sand, a lot of sand, and so to please stay away from the shores. It's said to stay away up to 10 miles. So if you're within a 10-mile section, it's possible with sloshing. You could be 2 miles from the lake, and if you're down in here, for example, in southern Michigan here, close to the lake, when the slosh happens in the south end of the lake first. So there's a lot of water up here, and if that sloshes down, you could find yourself with a being sloshed. And then if you have poor soil, ZetaTalk warns that if you've got poor soil underneath you, sandy soil, what have you, you could be washed out into the lake in the backwash. So that's the problem there. Up in here, I think you have much less problems with sloshing and poor soil not supporting you, but it's suggested that you be on rock if you're within 10 miles, but don't be within 10 miles. So that's the fear I've got, is that lulled into some type of into thinking you're safe because it's Michigan. and because it's just a lake, but it's a danger. So there's that thing with Michigan, and yeah. So keep in mind that in these areas here, as I said before, there will be no pole shift waves to reduce the population, to put it euphemistically. So there'll be going to be a lot of people that survive the pole shift in these areas. So if you have any concerns about some of the highly populated towns and some of the types of people that might be moving around, then that's one of the things that the interstates need to be take care of is aggressive migrants or thieves or marauding gangs in the aftertime. So again, it's very important to have propane cooking and propane for cooking in the aftertime, and to stay low and stay hidden until things settle down. So that's the states of Kentucky, Indiana, and Michigan. Okay, I want to conclude this video on the states of Kentucky and Indiana and Michigan with an explanation of this progression of the Earth changes in the rundown to the pole shift. And I keep saying that the pole shift cannot be in 2016, and it cannot be in 2017, and I want to explain why that is, why I believe that the pole shift will be well 5 years from now, and very likely to be in the year of 2023. Now, the focus of this particular piece is really to explain this map, essentially. So let's start with let's start with the map. We have a sequence of events that are from, now this map is essentially from ZetaTalk, so it's information of the points is from ZetaTalk. So we have a sequence that is taking place, and there's a reason for that. But first, let's look at the primary cause that's driving the sequence. We do know, the humans actually know of a little bit of a few things, and they know that there's pressures on all these different joints, these continental plates, and they're all moving certain directions. So, but in the last 10 years, since Planet X entered the solar system and is sitting about roughly 55 million miles away, sunward, slowly inching its way in a straight line through the solar system. It moves in a straight line because it's controlled by a massive dark sun 68 trillion miles away, and that force balanced with our massive sun. So the reason it's not bobbing about in our solar system and why it behaves like it does is because of the massive gravity influences of its two foci that it orbits between. So this is why Planet X moves in its straight line orbit. And it's nothing to do with Jupiter, it's nothing to do with anything else. It's obeying what it's been doing for millions of years. So man's science does not understand the full complement of the forces that are applied to Planet X. He just has no clue. So if you read something on the internet that says, oh, Jupiter this and this and that, So I'm going to explain this map. Let's start with the engine that is driving the Earth changes, and it's a patch up between the rotation of Earth, not the orbit. It's Earth is stopped in orbit. We're talking about the rotation of Earth, and that and the highly magnetic mid-Atlantic ridge, like that. And it's Earth's third magnet hanging on the edge of the crust of Earth. Now, that and the magnetic signature of Planet X. So you have three pieces put together. You have, now, you viewing the video, this video now, looking at the mid-Atlantic ridge, you are the sun and you are also Planet X, because Planet X is sunward. So you are Planet X looking down at the Earth. So when every time the mid-Atlantic ridge passes by the noon point, which is, this is the noon point, there's a tug, magnetic tug on the mid-Atlantic ridge, because, as I said, it's also a magnet. So it temporarily slows down Earth's rotation, and what it's doing is separating a stretching of the mid-Atlantic area. And what is happening is, when it does that, all the joints between all of the continental plates that make up the landmass and the ocean bottoms of the world become compressed together. So you got a stretching influence here, a slowdown, and that means that all the continental plates all compress. And this, I don't know how long it's not published in ZetaTalk, but I would guess that this temporary slowdown of Earth's rotation probably takes place over a period of 15-20 minutes, a half an hour. I don't know, but that's what's happening. So, and then as Earth rotates, there's another effect of the magnetrons that pass over around Earth, and then you have another when the mid-Atlantic ridge is 180 degrees on the other side of Earth. There's also in another tug when at midnight. This would be midnight. So there's 2 tugs a day that take place, and every time you get a tug to Planet X on the mid-Atlantic ridge, it slows the rotation and then compresses the joints. 12 hours later, boom, another tug. 12 hours later, another tug, another tug. This has been going on now for, well, since 2003. What's that, 13? I don't know, I'm not a mathematician. So, been going on for quite a while. So, that's what's compressed all the joints. Okay, so what happens is that, let's take a look at another. Okay, so we're going to go to this little globe here of the Earth showing the tectonic plates. I call them tectonic plates, the continental plates of Earth's crust. And so all these joints are all compressed now. They're not like they were 20 years ago, looser. So what the big lock on the movement of the reason why they're so compressed, well, the reason is because of Planet X, nearby presence of Planet X. But what is holding back all the big changes, the New Madrid and all these all these events. These are all major events, and they begin with the Indo-Australian plate being driven as a unit underneath the Himalayas. Now, what is now in this little explanation, in this particular depiction, it shows the Indian plate separate from the Indo-Australian plate, and in fact they work together. If you see some images of the Indo-Australian plate, you'll notice that it's actually, even though they show a crack here, which does exist, this plate does lay over. This is simplification, but it does lay over somewhat on the Indian plate. So the Indo-Australian plate is controlling the Indian plate, very much so, even though there is a crack there. And no wonder there's a crack there, because the Indo-Australian plate, every time it moves, which when it does move, what the movement is a tip. So what's happening is the Pacific plate is being driven under the Pacific plate is being compressed, and that means that it's subducting underneath the North American plate, and it's connected. The Pacific plate is connected to the Nazca plate, which is subducting underneath the South American plate, and it's also subducting underneath the Eurasian plate. But the movable plates are the Indo-Australian plate and the South American plate somewhat, and the African plate. These are the movable ones. These are the ones that are really adjusting to this whole process, speaking very simply. So now, so what we have is, in the case of the Indian plate and the Indo-Australian plate, we have a lock, a major lock here. So we know the Eurasian plate's not going to go anywhere. So these other plates have to adjust around it. And so when you look at the height of the Himalayan mountain range and the size of it, it's no wonder that it's so large. It's because of all the millions of years of the Indo-Australian plate driving the Indian plate underneath the Eurasian plate. And probably this is why this crack has finally occurred about 3 million years ago, because of all the pressure on the Indian plate. So what this area here is a major lock that's preventing all of the other it's holding back the fast progression of all the other locks that are happening around the world. So let's go back to the map. So once India is pushed down, it loses most of its land mass and sinks beneath the waves, and it's pushed down by the Indo-Australian plate to get underneath the Eurasian plate. So to further, once that happens, and it has to happen eventually, so then that kicks off a series of events. So when this plate tips and moves underneath the Eurasian plate, probably I think that'll happen sometime about a year to 8 months, even 6 months before the pole shift. When that happens, that makes space. That creates space in the joints. So then what happens is the sundial plate for this that the Philippines sit on, that gets pushed down. So that goes downward. Then you have the Philippine plate, which gets basically folded up and rumpled. So space is being made. Now these are all weaker plates. This is rubble. This plate is rubble. So these are weaker plates. So they collapse quickly, probably within weeks or months. So then after 3, you have, oh look, it's on the same latitude. No wonder, right? So you have, so that meanwhile, when the Eastern Pacific is making space, the western side of the Pacific will also starts to move, and so there would be a connection, a space connection between these joints over here moving and allowing space for the South American plate to roll to the west. When it does, look at the joint here. This is the joint. So this joint here, this mass is moving this way over the Caribbean plate, pushing it down. So you have the southern portion of the Caribbean plate going down, lifting the northern portion a little bit. And that's what drives the big wash of the water displacement into the Gulf. So that's going to affect Florida, all the Gulf states in here. When that occurs, when this rolls, and then this tears. So this is a weak point here, and that's the Mid-Atlantic ridge. The southern portion opens up. That tears there, because this is rolling now. That's why 4 follows 5. Then 6, when this rolls and this tears, now you've got space for Africa, the African plate, to roll to the west. As it rolls to the west, it pushes the boot, the Arabian boot into Iraq, and that's when you get the oil field exploding in there. So then, as Africa rolls, pushes the boot, then of course the upper portion of African plate is moving, and it pushes the floor of the Mediterranean Sea down. So then now, oh look, it's the same latitude. So, and then you've got Japan quakes. Now Japan, northern Japan is on the North American plate. Southern Japan is on the Eurasian plate. So the southern Japan islands, massive earthquakes occur first. So that whole set takes place. That's when my ears the hair in the back of my neck will be standing up on end, because it's after this completes that I get it in Victoria. But so then we have the northern islands a few weeks later. ZetaTalk says a few weeks later, the northern Japan islands have their massive set of earthquakes. So then, again, same latitude, we go over to the New Madrid happens, and what happens is that splits this old fault line, hidden fault line, from the Gulf of St. Lawrence down to Mexico, and all the bridges go down to Mississippi, probably Ohio, and then it moves, it adjusts. Apparently Mississippi will widen considerably, but that mainly happens during the pole shift. But this does adjust. Of course, it will continue to adjust until the pole shift, where the major adjustments will take place. But this will shift, and the reason, so that when this shifts, that makes space in this side of the North American plate for the upper portion of the Mid-Atlantic ridge to split and spread. In between there, we have the California quakes, and finally, with the rolling of the South American plate, pushing Mesoamerica into the sea and grinding it, and finally the San Andreas fault just got to give. And so I think actually this is a little bit confusing here, but I think at the same time the California quakes, they take place, by the way, very quickly after the New Madrid is boom boom, and then I think that goes up the coast like that to Victoria tsunami. So that is this map explained, and that's why it's a sequence of events, and there's perhaps many weeks to months between each of these sequences. So that's why I say that the New Madrid will be about a year, because I think this whole process may be a year or more to complete. That's why I say the New Madrid will be probably in the neighborhood of about 2022, and the pole shift to 2023 for other reasons that I've explained in other videos. So that concludes this video on Kentucky and Indiana and Michigan, and my explanation of this map. Thank you very much for watching.